What were your initial thoughts on Eric Bischoff?
I liked Eric. He was refreshing. I didn't know if he really had a handle on what he was doing, but I think he could be very personable. He was the one that said, "We need you here.
Right.
We want you here," and that was kind of good for me to hear. It got me back up again, and a new challenge. A new challenge.
Early on, what did you notice about the differences between WCW's TV and WWF's TV?
Instantaneously, the television production people. Production values. WCW, they were lousy. They weren't organized. It was just kind of a shoddy production. But eventually, they turned the light on down there, and their production values came up with the advent of Nitro, Monday Nitro, and I think they looked just about as good as the WWE.
Were you surprised when Vince created the character Scheme Gene?
Scheme Gene. Why would he come up with that character? What do you think? I'm scamming old people out of their retirement money? I mean, one lousy hotline,
right,
and he calls me Scheme Gene.
Did you get offended by that, or
no?
No. Okay.
Why would you get offended?
Right.
The huckster, the Nacho Man.
Right.
Please.
Did you ever talk to anybody in the company about it in WWE at the time? Did you still have contact with anybody?
I did, but very little. I mean, They had a job to do. We have a job to do.
Talk about the hotline for WCW. Was it a big moneymaker for you, or?
It was a big moneymaker for me, but it was a much bigger moneymaker for them. I took that hotline over. It was doing approximately $350,000 a year in revenue. Jimmy Ross and others were doing it. But we got her up and running and started promoting it on the air. And I think you guys will always remember tonight in my hotline, 909-9900, all of that.
Right.
But it ended up doing $3 million a year.
Wow. Did you ever feel sleazy by some of the cheap teases that you gave for it at all?
Yeah, I did, no question. But on the other hand, you got to have a little bit of that carny in you.
Exactly.
Humpty Diddy, tip the kitty, 3 throws for $1. Come on in, folks.
Right.
Sure.
Do you think the internet ruined the business?
No. I think the internet just became another extension of the dirt sheets.
Right.
Those great publications, and they were. I mean, all of a sudden there was this subculture that was developing because of guys like Meltzer and folks like yourself and Wade Keller and some of these other guys.
Right. Now, when you first heard about the idea for Monday Night Nitro, did you think it would work? What were your thoughts?
The only thing I thought is, why go head-to-head with the guy on Monday night? Why not give the wrestling fans a chance to enjoy both Raw and Nitro by going on a different night? Now that I look back at it, kind of a genius of a move. That move, by the way, was purely Ted Turner.
Right.
Yeah.
You talked earlier.
Ted Turner said, BS. We're not going to go on Wednesday night. We're going to go on Monday night head-to-head with the guy.
Eric Bischoff, we talked about him a couple of minutes ago. Do you feel he was in control of his product, or do you think like Hogan was in his ear? And then I heard stories that Nash and Scott Hall kind of had control of him.
Everybody was in his ear.
Right.
I think what Eric probably should have done, as I look back in 2020 hindsight, probably should have put himself inside the room with a good television producer. Somebody like a Kevin Dunn. You get somebody like that. Kevin Dunn, obviously not available,
right.
But maybe, just maybe, there might be somebody out there. Work those details out with them, and not let the boys, and have them in the contract that they had creative control over their character.
Right.
Come on.
Right.
Give me a break.
Huh. Do you think Bischoff understood the business, or do you think he was in over his head?
Oh, I think he was in way over his head. I think the general consensus, if you talk to Eric Bischoff, I think he would tell you the thing just began to spin out of control, and you couldn't stop it. It would be like holding your hand up in front of a freight train. It couldn't be stopped. But I mean, there was great success there with the NWO.
Right.
But all of a sudden, the NWO became bigger than WCW.
Right.
You had 20 guys over there.
Eric Bischoff changed over time.
Eric Bischoff, I think, believed that as time went on that he was a genius and he was the great creator of this thing. And then all of a sudden he became very power hungry. Being able to tell people what to do, and if they didn't do it, what he could do to them. That he, with the snap of a finger, could end their careers. Not so.
Right.
Not so.
One of it's one of the interviews you did on the internet with Brett with El Dandy. What are your memories of that? Do you remember that one, or?
I do recall that. Is this the one where Brett kind of vented his spleen?
Yes.
Here again, too much information.
Right.
Yeah. Back to Eric, just for a second.
Sure.
Now that Eric and myself aren't working together, or I'm not working for him, he and I have had some pretty good conversations. He can be likable, and I think that his tenure here in the WWE, I think he did a great job for the company.
Definitely.
I don't think a lot of people would argue with the fact. As the general manager, he had credibility, and he certainly could play the part of a heel without too much work.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. I mean, when Vince Russo came in there, he wasn't the solution. He added to the problem because the boys were going to buck him, and they knew they could do it and get away with it. Plus, he had a little different idea of what television was all about.
Right. Yeah. Was it frustrating when Eric's constant attempts at trying to work the locker room and the boys with different angles and stuff?
You know, at that particular point, I think Bobby Heenan and myself had stepped back and realized that it was a different era where maybe the tail was wagging the dog. And I mean, it was so apparent because plans would have to be changed at the last minute.
Lots of politics.
A lot of politics, and that doesn't work. If I can go to Doug and tell him something and go around you're offended, and he doesn't get what he initially wanted anyway, I've offended both of you.
Right.
And that's kind of the name of the game. And politics ran rampant, as they would say, in WCW.
Jumping back to Eric, I didn't mean to jump around, but what do you feel Eric's biggest mistake was in WCW? Was it listening to the boys?
Listening to the boys.
Letting the guys
and I
run
mean
stuff.
everybody. That would be as big a mistake as listening to me.
Right.
But I mean, having the input, Bret Hart had creative control. Kevin Nash had creative control over his character. Hogan, obviously. But I think the big one was Bill Goldberg.
All right.
Bill Goldberg, somebody that hadn't been in the business more than 2.5 or 3 years.
Exactly.
And he was calling his shots. And I like Goldberg. I mean, he's a fun guy, great guy.
How did things change when Russo came over?
All things changed instantly. Number one, talking politics, the boys had their respective noses as far up his rear end the first day of TV as they possibly could.
Wow.
Everybody tried to, huddle with him. Where's my spot going to be here? What am I going to be able to do? Am I going to be a champion? What can we do? I've been good to you. Vince, now here's your chance where you can be good to me.
Do you think he was in over his head?
Definitely.
Bobby Heenan talks a lot about Tony Schiavone being untrustworthy and slimy. Do you agree?
Well, Tony was the consummate politician, and I personally like Tony. I didn't have a lot of problems with him, but Tony watched out for Tony,
All right.
and in doing so, he had a tendency to bury people along the way, and that's where he got kind of the rep, if you will, that he was not trustworthy.
Thoughts on Mike Tenay?
Mike Tenay? knowledgeable, not a broadcaster, but certainly knew a lot about wrestling. His specialty was the Mexican lucha libre promotions and also the Japanese promotions.
Right.
He came out of nowhere, and I understand he's still around today doing TNA.
Right. What are your thoughts on Mark Madden and your match?
Well, that was an abortion. Should have never happened. But that wasn't Mark Madden's fault. That wasn't Gene Okerlund's fault. That was Vince Russo's fault. Who would put a piece of garbage like that on television intentionally? And I mean, you're not going to make any money off of it. You're not going to draw. You're going to embarrass me. You're going to embarrass Mark Madden, who should be at Weight Watchers. Not that I'm saying I shouldn't be, but I mean, it was terrible.
Did you say anything?
Pardon?
Did you say anything to the office at all about it, or
Who are you going to talk to?
just did it and got paid?
The only guy I could have talked to would have been Brad Siegel, who was the entertainment division head for Turner Time Warner.
Do you think at that time they were doing these angles and matches, just they were worried too much about the buy rate or the ratings of that 1 quarter hour where it like compromised the product?
No long-term thinking at all. You hit the nail on the head. They were worrying about getting a Monday night rating or getting a Wednesday night rating or getting a buy rate. But that episode down in Florida, and I believe it was at Bash at the Beach or one of those pay-per-views where Vince Russo went off with that shoot interview on Hogan.
No.
I thought that was absolutely despicable. That was the end of it.
Right.
That was it. It was all over, baby. That was it.